Cool.
All right, well, it looks like everyone has shuffled in. So just to give you all a quick overview of what we're going to be doing today, this is really, it's your session. Mark and I are here to answer any of your questions that you might have about proposing for our Learning Guild conference, or very specifically the DevLearn 2021 speaking proposal, call for proposals that's out right now. That's open from yesterday up until March 12th. And in today's chat, you're going to see that there's a Q&A section that you'll have access to, where you can put in your questions, and kind of like Reddit, you can also upvote the questions that you like best and you think we should answer first. And so pop your questions in there. And while you're doing that, Mark, can I get you to share maybe an initial tip about if someone is not sure if they want to propose to speak at an event or not, what can help them make that decision?
Well, I think, for me, and I was just telling somebody else this in a tweet, we all have a story to tell. We're all doing, it's, sometimes it's imposter syndrome. I think you have to get over it. We all do some amazing work in the field, and there's small niche areas that we focus on, and there's broader approaches to using tools. It's really kind of looking at it and saying, what do I have to share? Because we all have something to share, and really making that distinction, that if you want to put yourself out there and bring forward something to the community, this is a perfect opportunity to do it. So I think starting there helps. I think the other thing too is, if you look at any of our past events and you see what's been posted online for other sessions, you get a nice snapshot, of what, a session contains. If they made it on the program, then, the team felt, and we kind of speak for the community, we're not necessarily the gatekeepers. We're looking at, from a community perspective, what is going to be of value for the learning community. So take a look at those. I think that's one thing I would definitely recommend.
Oh, great. I'm starting to see some questions coming in. So
Cool.
If you just joined us, put any of your questions in the Q&A section, and you should be able to access that at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And feel free to upvote any you're particularly interested in. So let me get the first one from Lisa here. She asked, what are some of the high-level topics this year's conference will focus on?
Go for it.
Yeah, all right. So DevLearn, out of all the Learning Guild conferences, is the one that most focuses on that intersection of learning and technology. So things like online learning, e-learning, e-books, video, text-based learning, email newsletters, anything that's kind of connected to learning and performance support that's happening with some sort of digital connection, whether it's all digital or maybe it's part of blended learning, that's part of it. We regularly have sessions that are about more general instructional design practices, more general management and strategy practices when it comes to learning and development. There's a bit of appetite at DevLearn to kind of know stuff that's practical for right now, but also some aspirational stuff. What's coming down the pipeline that maybe I can't use right this minute, but I should know about now so I'm prepared later too. Mark, anything I missed?
No, I think the other thing too, just to keep in mind is, we have broad categories or tracks that kind of guide people's thinking in terms of what are topically looking at. So management and strategy topics are very popular. Instructional design is very popular. We obviously lean into that future lean with DevLearn. So there is VR and AR is always something as a complement for this. So using that virtual training, virtual learning, these are all pieces to look at. Is there one over another? No. I mean, the community is dynamic and the needs are constantly shifting. So Bianca, myself, David, always do our best to keep our finger on the pulse to drive that. And I think that's one of the things to do is kind of look again, what are those categories, those tracks that I just named a few of them that are a good way to kind of tailor your topic against. All
right, really important question that I'm sure a lot of people are wondering about because of the joys of a pandemic. Is it going to be in person or online? And as someone who is currently in Canada and our borders are closed, this is an important question. Mark, do you mind if I just jump in on that one?
Oh, no, just take it, run. Yep.
So here's how all of the Learning Guild conferences are going to be working right now. We're going to be planning for an in-person conference, but as we get closer to the event and we're paying attention to what's happening with the pandemic situation, if it doesn't seem like it's going to be safe for us to run the event, we have a plan to pivot online. We did that with DevLearn last year. We've just moved Learning Solutions this year to an online event. If you went to DevLearn, the DDX experience last year, you'll have a good sense of what that's like. It's a robust, full conference held in a tool called Attendify. And if you're selected for the in-person event, we bring all the speakers over that we can, either as a live session or a recorded session. So you'll still have access to the full conference as a speaker. You'll just be an online speaker because we want everyone to be safe.
Good answer. That's it. That's all we can offer at this point, right? That's our goal.
So this is a really good question for people who are new to the Learning Guild proposal process. How much info do you need for the proposal? Does it have to be everything ready to go today, or can I still be working on the concept and info?
So I'm going to take that one to start with, Bianca. So I think we have to, evaluate the proposals on what you provide us in the details of the description of, what problem or challenge, and then how your session is going to address that. If what you mean in there is, do I have to have any resources already built? Do I have to have my slide deck already built? Do I have to? No. What you're doing is kind of framing or outlining what the intent is. Do we count on you to meet those objectives? Absolutely. And so does your audience. So there is a trust factor in there that what you provide us is a completed proposal. So once it's submitted, it's kind of in our hands. There's not an opportunity at that point to tweak it or send new information along. And keep in mind, we get anywhere from 700 to 900 of these. So it's really hard for us to pause and stop and add and change. So I hope that answers it. Bianca, something else?
Yeah, just if you're not sure if you have enough of a baked idea for the proposal, first, download the proposal form questions. We have them available in a Word document, and they do a really good job at guiding you towards what we're looking for and what details we don't need just yet. And if you're still not sure, reach out to Mark and I. That document has our contact information. It's programs@learningguild.com. You can find both of us online. We are super happy to help you out with any feedback you might need before you submit.
Yeah, and that goes a long ways. If you're new to this and you want some feedback and you reach out to us and we give that to you and you apply that, these are very helpful in your process. So, it's a simple email, phone call if you want to set it up. And we're happy to do it and bring your ideas to life.
So here's another really good question for people who maybe haven't been to a Learning Guild conference or DevLearn specifically. Do you have a preference for types of presentations, such as practical presentations like case studies, tips and tricks, or more informational presentations like exploring a theory or framework?
Me personally?
Yeah, Mark has a very personal preference about this.
No, I'll speak from the organization as our events as a whole. We like a balance, so no, there's not a preference, that we're looking for. We're not evaluating these on, is it a case study? Is it tips and tricks? Is it a single tool focused one? Or is it some Frankenstein of multiple tools put together? That's not the case at all. Actually, having diversity is important in our programs, and diversity of those particular types of sessions, that people want and need. Let the content kind of dictate the direction you're going, of course, right? So if you can present a case study and you want to dive a little bit deeper, then bring that forward. If you're talking about some tips and tricks, how were those really used and applied? Let's be authentic about it. As I joked in the front end, I'm a big case study guy, but that does not sway my decision at all. But keep in mind that anything goes, as long as it's going to bring value to the community.
And just one thing to add to that, while we like having a wide variety of types of sessions, our attendees are really keen on sessions that they can do something with. So sometimes you'll have someone propose something, particularly with regards to emerging technology, that's very theoretical. Maybe they're talking about, one thing we used to see a lot of was, what is VR? And I think for our audience, they're kind of past that point and they're more interested in okay, well, what do I do with it in a learning context? For some emerging technologies, that's going to be a little bit more theoretical, but as much as you can bring in practical examples, even if they're kind of bleeding edge, our audience is really keen on that.
Very good. Let's see. Next one up anonymously is anything related to remote working given the current world circumstances? The answer simply is sure. How you're supporting remote working is still a valuable contribution to the conversation. So if you're actually doing that work or you have the resources you're applying, I guarantee the community would be very interested in hearing your story on that.
Yeah, just as long as it's connecting back to our audience, which is going to be people in learning and development roles. So remote working in general, a little harder to make it onto the program depending on the angle, but how does remote working and learning development connect together in some way? Could be a great fit.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we've got a question. Can we submit as a team and share the presentation spotlight between team members to show how our project moves through different members?
Interesting story. Well, keep in mind, there's, in a live event in particular, there's a limited amount of time and a limited amount of space. So we have typically a main presenter and co-presenters. So we haven't seen that go over 3 people in presenting a particular session on the average. So if that's answering your question, you obviously can have co-presenters with you. I mean, if you're just telling the story and want to bring that to life and how it affected different team members, and don't necessarily need their voice or presence, that's another angle to take too.
Yeah, I like personally that for case studies, that if a group kind of comes in, maybe it's 3 people who worked on different sections of the project, and the way the case study is cut up is, person A, I did the start, here's the design work, person B, here's the development, and person C, here's what we did with the data from use. Like something like that's great. This is probably a really good time to talk about speaker compensation though.
Yeah.
That may connect to how many co-presenters you consider including. So the way that Learning Guild events work is the primary presenter in your proposal, the first person listed, gets a free session or a conference registration in their name. It's not transferable, can't be split. First co-presenter gets a discounted registration rate. So they still have to pay to register, but it's at a nice discount. So, to acknowledge their work. Any additional presenters need to be registered at the regular conference rate, although they can use any kind of discounts that are out there. And if you guys are just thinking of coming as attendees, keep an eye on the Learning Guild discounts because they're nice.
Let's see here. We have a question about face-to-face. Do presenters have the option to present virtually? As we stated early on, we're focusing on a face-to-face event. That's our ideal situation and what we're working towards. In that particular case, we can't always guarantee, like, for example, in a face-to-face event that the hotel Wi-Fi or whatever is provided for us can support a virtual. So you don't want to pull that piece into a live one as well. But at the events themselves, the primary focus is a live event. Now, of course, we have had the DDX and Learning Solutions digital experiences coming up, which is completely a virtual event, which changes that a lot. So those are things to be mindful of as we continue towards this event, how the pandemic will dictate, what we end up having to do.
So this is a really good one, and it's something that we've been talking about internally. Will the change in the name from the e-learning guild, which was our old name, to the Learning Guild, new name, be reflected in the topics you're looking for in speaking proposals?
No, I think what when you think about the change, it's interesting because a lot of people are like, why the shift? And the shift really happened because we were much more deeper into learning as well as e-learning. It's more reflective of where we have been, not that necessarily where we are going. So, we've continually had not only technology-driven focus in the organization and at our events, but at the same time, we've had, areas of instructional design, the design aspect of it, management and strategy type topics are brought forward. Areas outside of how, bringing marketing into learning, those things weren't necessarily technology driven. So it's a reflection of kind of the current state of where we've been as an organization, not necessarily somewhere where we're trying to achieve to go.
All right, so this is a question that's going to be hard to answer, and we'll tell you why in just a second, but I think it's really important for us to talk about. I know there are suggested topics in the call for proposals, but can you identify any specific topics that you're hoping to see or have increased interest in? So here's where I'm going to talk about the hard part. We have a really hard time knowing what people are going to propose each year, and some things are regularly proposed and some things we've drought one year and it's super popular next year. So we want to be careful not to steer you towards a specific topic because we're like, oh, last year we didn't have a lot of proposals about that, because this year could be different. In general, though, I think some of the stuff we talked about earlier, practical things that touch upon the intersection of technology and learning. I know I'm always really curious to see proposals about how people are using games in learning because I'm a huge nerd and we'd love to see more proposals on that. There's people doing really cool stuff. So what haven't I seen a lot of? How about you, Mark, as of late? Once again, prefacing this by saying this year's call for proposals could play out differently, but in the past.
Yeah, it's funny, and I think it's lower than, I guess I would say it this way. I think it was lower than I expected, and that was some of the sessions that would fall into like workflow learning. That's picking up a pace. It's something I think is a growing interest, and it's loosely defined. So
Yeah.
it's an area I think we should see blossoming. I'd like to see blossom.
Yeah, and I think something we've talked about before is sessions on how people are really using the data that they're collecting.
Yeah,
There's
data.
some really, really great sessions on how to collect data, especially with XAPI. I'd love to see some case studies about what people are doing with that.
Yep.
But really, if you're curious, if you look at our list of ideas and you're like, I'm thinking about this, I don't know if it fits, reach out. We're going to be happy to let you know if we think it could be a fit or not.
Yeah, that's a great one to bring forward to us. Absolutely.
I've got a question about past proposals, and this is very specific to someone's circumstance of having done proposals in the past. I'm going to kind of use a horrible term, parking lot this, only in that if it's specific to your proposals, please set up some time with Mark or myself with that programs at eLearning or Learning Guild, still saying eLearning Guild, at learningguild.com, because we are very happy to talk to you about your specific proposals and give you any kind of like personalized feedback.
Yep, very good. Do you require a video of the previous, that one bounced on me, previous presentations? No, we don't require a video, no.
No, and part of the reason for that is we want to encourage new speakers. We are really happy to say that we have at least 20% new speakers, new to DevLearn on the program every year, at least 20%, because we know it's incredibly important to both have new voices sharing with our community, also to make space for that, because it's really hard to get your first experience speaking at a conference if you always have to have had experience speaking at conferences. So it's one of the reasons we don't make video of a past presentation required.
Let's see what topics, we kind of addressed this one earlier, Bianca. It's like, what topics would both of you like to hear? What's your style of presentation that makes you say, wow, was very creative? Well, again, we speak for the community. We try to bring a diversity of approaches into the sessions. I think that's critical. So obviously some of the examples I given before were spot on. There's great case study examples, there's great tips and tricks, there's great uses of different tools, kind of project-based ones. And I noticed there's another question about theoretical pieces too. I think in the end, it comes down to, you want to be thinking about how the audience is going to walk away from your session to be able to do better or different because of your session. So it's kind of that practicality piece is important too, and getting back to work and being able to put into practice what they're learning about.
I will say this because it's not always the case with every audience. Our audience members are usually pretty on board with doing in-session interactions. So I've seen great things done with group discussions. I've seen them polls and quizzes done with Kahoot. I saw an activity once that involved flutes, recorders.
Right.
Our audience is pretty game to play along if you want to build an interactivity to your session. It's not a requirement, and people aren't going to boo you off the stage if you don't do it. But if you want to play with that a little bit, our audience will help. And then touching on, I think you had kind of mentioned this, a question about being more open to theoretical pieces based on research. I'd say there's a fine line with the research-based pieces. I think our audience is really interested in research, but then they want help translating the research to, okay, so how does this apply to my real world? Yeah. You could take the research that you're doing, in this case, the person was doing a dissertation, and then present a bit about that and go, okay, so what does this mean for you in your day-to-day work? And that being able to translate the research into the real world, people love that. So if you can do that, your audience will be super happy.
Yeah, and I think it's also a question, Bianca, that points to who our audience is. And a great deal of our audience is truly kind of organizational learning professionals. Not that we don't have segmentations in academia and even in K-12 higher education. But a lot of them are practitioners. They're working in the field and working in their organizations. They want to put into practice. So having that application piece is going to be critical for anything that has a research or theoretical lean.
Question about games of gamification, scenario-based learning versus the go-to multiple choice format. Oh, yes. Complex games and gamification is ideal. I think our audience has an understanding of the baseline of gamification in particular, and they're ready to go with the next step. What goes beyond points, badges, and leaderboards? And very specifically, let's talk about serious games and games used for training. So not just like a game shell, but a real legitimate game. Question, our team seems pretty disappointed when sessions don't show what they're talking about. We want to see a class or a storyline file or a Captivate file. But do others agree with this? Do they want to see examples or not just hear about it?
Yeah, I think being able to showcase some examples is always reinforcing your message. I think that's a smart move when you can do it. But let's be honest, sometimes people do have work that they don't have permission necessarily to go to that level and share. And I think it can happen. I hope the presenters are upfront about that. I think that's much more being much more sincere. But I would definitely advocate for being able to show a little bit of the product or the solution you made in action within a session like that.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on the session focus. So if someone is talking about visual design principles, they're going to show examples of the principles, but maybe not in every single tool that you use. Or if someone's doing a case study, maybe they'll show you the front end of a project, but not the back end, because they're really much more convinced about the story. But we do always look, when Mark and I are reviewing proposals, for things that are going to show you how to, for lack of a better term, do the thing. We know our attendees, like the person who wrote that comment, want to be able to replicate this stuff in their own work. So as much as a session is going to not just show you how to do how they did something, but tell you, here's how you can do it too, that gives something big bonus points for us. All right, would we be interested in seeing presentations with language translation in mind as the focus?
I think it has application. We don't get a ton of those. We were talking earlier about, what areas we don't get a lot in. And it depends on who it's geared towards. Keep in mind, again, like I said early on, who our audience typically is made up of. And some of the language translation services are valuable, but in some cases, those are going to be kind of international or, multinational companies who are maybe doing things like that, which, I don't have the statistics in front of me to show us, how many of those organizations are present. But it has been would we be interested? The answer simply is yes. Of course, we'd look at that as an answer. But at the same time, I haven't seen it being something of a huge draw, but Bianca, you might see it differently.
Yeah, I think this brings up something that we should acknowledge, is that every time we're reading proposals, we are considering how big an audience at our event do we think there is for a particular topic. So DevLearn pulls predominantly from North America, although we do have worldwide attendees as well. Up here in Canada, because that's where I'm based, translation is a bigger thing because of English and French. Up here, translation is a little less of a hot button issue in the US if it's content that isn't going out beyond the US, although there's obviously some exceptions to that. So sometimes the challenge for something like that is positioning the topic in a way where it reaches as broad an audience as possible. So if it's language translation for storyline files, that narrows it so much that there might not be a huge audience, and we might go, this is an interesting story, but I've got other proposal ideas that I think would draw more people. So just a thing to keep in mind. And if that's something you're not sure how to frame the topic in a way to bring a bigger audience, once again, reach out to Mark and I, and you can bounce that idea off of us and we can help.
Andy, you're very welcome. We're happy to answer all your questions.
How large is an audience typically as we're thinking about practical application activities?
Yeah. Well, with practical application activities, when you say the word activities, I'm thinking about a bring your own device type session, which we do try to work to have, 1 or 2 of those per block on our particular programs. However, it's tricky to gauge, how many people will be drawn to a particular session. We do a session selection preference survey. So what that does is kind of indicate a little bit where attention might be, but nobody is necessarily assigned after that point to have to go to that particular session. So the numbers can fluctuate greatly. I mean, we've seen rooms overflowing in the past, so it's a little bit tougher to gauge. Go ahead, Bianca.
Yeah, so DevLearn has some really large rooms and some much smaller rooms. So your session could have anything anywhere from 20 odd people in it to a few hundred.
Yeah.
But like Mark said, we'll contact you a few weeks before the event and let you know, hey, here's the rough estimate we have of people we expect to be in your session. That's actually how we pick which session rooms each session is assigned to, so that it's kind of right sized for how many people are interested in going. And then you can adjust what you're doing based on that information.
Mm-hmm.
Our bring your own device sessions, if you've never heard of them before, you haven't been to a guild event, it is you bring a device, whether it's a laptop or a mobile device, so that you can make something in the session. So if you were going to do a Captivate or Storyline session where you actually make something in that software, that would end up being a BYOD. We've done sessions where people bring in their mobile device to make something on that. And those sessions do have more limited seating. So you will not have 500 people in a bring your own device session, because the rooms we have for those particular sessions are much smaller, so that you have enough desk space.
Yeah.
So the plus side of that, it means that you're not trying to support 500 people all learning how to do something in, say, Storyline. We have a problem that fixed itself with downloading proposals.
Yeah, that's good.
But that brings up something that some of you might not know. We have made available, I mentioned earlier, a Word document with all the proposal questions in it. So you don't have to flip through the proposal form to get them. It's great for writing a draft of your proposal or proposals. You can submit more than one. We also have a PDF that has examples and non-examples of what we're looking for in proposals. And you can download those both from the proposal form itself. The very first page has links to both.
Let's see here. We have a question regarding, can we survey, looking at the speaker, potential speakers looking at surveying the prospective participants beforehand around the proposed topic agenda. Well, I mean, there's a couple things involved in that. One is we don't know who's necessarily going to attend your session. So it's not like they sign up and then they're into your particular session. So I think that makes it a little bit harder. Obviously, doing some larger crowdsourcing around your topic is something you could do on your own, but there's no way to necessarily touch the individuals at our events themselves. So that could not be done.
But if you've got connections to people on social media, that can be a place that you can do some advanced polling. It won't give you everyone who's going to be in the session room, but it can give you a bit of a gauge. And we also have conference hashtags. So hashtag DevLearn if you want to try and reach people who are keen on the conference.
Mm-hmm.
That can help out a little bit, but it is a little more limited. We'll admit that.
We have a question about, are you interested in proposals featuring VR, AR, mixed reality application and learning? Yes.
Yes, very much so. That's a great fit for DevLearn.
Yep.
And we're very much looking at it from the perspective, like I said earlier, not just what it is. Our audience gets that. It's how is it used in our world? And yes, so please submit those.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, and Judy mentioned in here that she finds I'm assuming it's the Word file with the questions as a great resource. So thank you, Judy.
Thank you, Judy.
Recommend write your proposals in advance in a Word doc beforehand, rather than trying to write them on the go in the proposal form, because then you can put it down, walk away, kind of refresh your brain and go back and look at it.
Right.
And also have someone else give it a once over.
Okay. Yeah, we can talk with you, Kristen. Let's just send us an email. We can set something up and have a conversation. I think it's a great way to tackle your specific issue. Bianca, we're at 1 o'clock. Do you have anything we should touch on that hasn't been asked?
Let's see. Let's quickly touch on some of the issues we see trip up really good proposals. Where we're like, you're close, but you needed to, if you just did one thing slightly different, that would help it be even stronger.
Okay. All right. I like that. I like that frame. Do you have something in mind? Because you brought it up first.
Well, it was had in mind that we have a video series on this, but we may as well cover a few. If you go to the Learning Guild YouTube channel, Mark and I have done some videos on this, because I'd say the vast majority of the proposals that don't make the cut, most of them are pretty good, but need a couple little things to be done differently, and then that would make them incredibly strong. The thing that I see a lot is people not providing a lot of detail.
Yeah.
That's the one that, oh, it hurts our heart. We're like, oh, this is a really cool concept. And then we start reading through the rest of the description, and we're just not sure what's going to be shared specifically in the session. So going back to my visual design concepts idea from earlier, someone said, oh, so my session's going to be about visual design. I'm going to share the 5 most important things that you need to know about visual design. And then they don't tell us what the 5 things are. It's really hard for us to know what that session is going to be like in the real world.
Yeah.
It's hard for us to compare and contrast it against other similar proposals. And so we'll tend to go, I don't quite know what the session's going to be like, and pick a session that has given us more detail. I usually say, treat it like the world's worst movie trailer. A bad movie trailer is going to give you all the main plot points, and you go, I don't need to see it.
I don't see it, yeah.
A really good session description, though, is going to tell you the main plot points, not all the details, but the main plot points. So we, as the reviewers, don't have to wonder what's going to be shared.
Yeah, that's good. And the plot points too are like, the big thing to remember is when you're writing a proposal, don't write it to Bianca and myself. Write it to the audience you intend to be there. Know who that audience is. We list out on the website, that these type of roles will be present at the event. So think about who's going to be there and what they're going to take away, and write to them, and especially about, what it is in particular they're going to learn or be able to do or get better at because of your session. So make sure that detail is present.
We've got a question: virtual video production seminar with a hands-on example of what we've figured out. That sounds like it could work, and feel free to reach out to us if you want to get into any more detail about the idea.
Yep.
Got a comment on the paintings behind Mark. Mark, tell a little bit about the painting.
Well, thank you, Bianca, and thanks for the comment there on is it Ballard? Yeah. So what I see up here is my daughter's handiwork for the most part. Please note this is not a bear, but this with this ongoing joke at the guild. It looks like a bear at a distance, but it's actually a fire pit. It's mine. So anyway, thanks. I'm going to go back to the hot tips real quick.
Yeah.
I started with, since there's still a lot of folks listening in. One thing I think is critically important is a lot of times when people are crafting the description, there's really 2 parts to it. It's really about, what is the problem or issue or challenge faced by the industry or the individual. That's the first thing. You have to be able to speak to, what is this reason I'm giving a presentation to help people? And the second part of that is to address that. How is your session going to solve that problem, that issue, that challenge, and laying that out? My suggestion is get that crafted first. And I'll be honest with you. Bianca and I both enjoy a catchy title, a little bit of story and narrative or something in the description. But the point is to try and be very specific about the specific technologies that are going to be used, the objectives you're going to meet, and worry about titling it, for example, and things like that after you've kind of formulated the body of it. Keep in mind this too. A lot of people, when they're looking at sessions, I can't guarantee they're even going to read down to the objectives. I can't even guarantee they're going to read the full description. So when you're crafting a title for your session, you want to be as clear and descriptive of what that is going to be about, right at that center point of their attention when they see that description online. So I'd recommend that you think through, what it is you're going to be covering, and then go back to writing that title so it speaks to that, just in case they don't get that far, they catch the title.
Yeah, but related to that, if you have an amazing proposal and the title's just okay, we will never say no to a proposal because
That's true.
everything is right except for the title. We'll work with you on the title.
Just make our jobs a little easier,
Make our
people.
jobs easier if you give us a great title right from the get-go. But that's never going to be the thing that keeps you from getting a presentation slot.
Yep.
One thing I wanted to note is, as we're thinking about the audience for things, is as you're looking at an idea, in particular case studies, try and figure out how you can broaden the audience. So if you have a very unique case study to the field you're in, maybe you work in training for hospitals. If you make the entire story about just training for hospitals, that's hard to find a large audience for. You could do a case study that's about that exact same project and, say it's your situation was hospitals, but here's some other places that what you learned from the project could apply. That gets you a much broader audience and we're more likely to go, oh, that could fit.
Yeah, and Bianca, that's great because that's a huge stumble that we see over and over again, is not bridging across the audience. Your audience isn't just going to be folks who are at a hospital, right? So they're going to want to come there learning about this. How does it apply to them? You got to answer that question. I'll also add this, academic proposals or proposals from academic institutions. The same thing holds true. Think about the broader audience that will be in attendance and how whatever you did in the academic setting will benefit somebody who might be in a corporate setting.
Yeah, and while we're on this topic of our attendees, the vast majority of attendees at DevLearn are playing in the corporate space. We have a smaller section of people who are in the academic space. So if you can have things that, if you're in academic space that can relate to the world of corporate, that's great too. And we always love to get sessions from academic speakers. I think there's a lot of great things corporate can learn from academia and academia can learn from corporate. And we want that cross-pollination.
Yep.
Got a question about bringing in teasers for a speaker's session to build some awareness and excitement. We actually, if you get accepted, one of the things we encourage you to do is to create a short trailer for your session, and we'll help add that to your session description, like a little commercial for your session. And that's something that you can share online too. They're great. And we give you some guidelines about what we've seen work really well. And we're happy to support you on that. You need to make them, but we're happy to get them out there.
There's also the speaker center too. So, as if you're selected to speak, we'll provide things such as a badge and information about how you can share and showcase your work online.
Yeah, we want to make the proposal process easy for you, but we also want to make the speaking process easy for you. So if you're accepted to speak, we give you help. There's a speaker center with information. You can always reach out to us. We want to help promote your session as well. We'll help with that. We just don't want you to feel like you're kind of left adrift.
Yeah. Anything else, Bianca, come to mind that hasn't been asked that we probably should address with the folks who are sticking around?
Just give people a little sense of, once you propose, how long will it be until you hear back? Because people sometimes wonder about that.
Yeah.
So the call for proposals ends on March 12th. You'll probably hear back by late spring, which seems like it's a lot of time. But I'm going to give you the very quick, here's what happens in between when you hit submit and when you hear back from us. Mark and I read every single proposal that comes in. We do not use any kind of digital software to search for keywords or anything. Every single submission is looked at with human eyes. For DevLearn, that can be about 700 to 900 proposals that each one of us reads and reviews. And David Kelly, another member of the team, also does reviews as well. We each review them in isolation from each other and from the other proposals. We just kind of look at it and go, does this feel like it could be a fit for the event? Yes or no, or maybe if we want to discuss it. Then all three of us pool our reviews together. Anything where all three of us agreed on either becomes a yes or a no. Anything where we didn't agree on, and that's often because Mark, David, and I all come from different areas on learning and development. And so sometimes we'll have some different additional context for something. So we discuss them and then decide if it's a yes or a no. When we hit that point of yeses, it's usually at least 2 times more sessions that we like and think are a fit than we have space for. So we start building the program out, doing a balance of topics, subtopics, experienced speakers versus new speakers, which we mentioned, and that to build out the program. And at that point, we'll send out the yeses and the nos, but we'll have a whole bunch of sessions that we really liked that there weren't space for. It's not that they're bad sessions, it's just that space issue. We'll go back to that list if we get cancellations. So just because you got a no initially
Right.
doesn't mean it's a permanent no. I'll often go back to that list when we're programming online events too, because obviously we liked the session and we want to find space for it somewhere. And if you get a no on a proposal, like I said, it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but we will always spend some time with you to talk through our reviews and what could be done differently if we thought it needed some tweaks. And so when you get your feedback, if you happen to get a no, it'll give you a bunch of information and then information on how to contact us, and we can schedule either a meeting or give you feedback by email. So you're never wondering, well, why didn't it make the program?
That's right. Yep. Yeah. So and Bianca hints to it right there. You can already do the math, 700 to 900 proposals, 120 to 140 sessions, 60 sessions on the program. The biggest driver of who gets on and who doesn't is a lot of times if you don't make it, it's not because your proposal was bad. It came down to real estate and some very difficult decisions internally. And we're happy to share that information with you. So just reach back out if you were not accepted at this time. And Bianca hinted to that. If we say not accepted at this time, it's never a no. There could be opportunity that opens up again on the program.
Or other programs.
Yes, right. We have other outlets.
Yep. So a plan B in the event that the in-person can't happen. So this had come up earlier. I'm just going to quickly revisit it. Our game plan is to go in person, but if we get closer to the event and the pandemic situation means it's not safe, we will pivot to an online event. We've done a few of them now. And there's some details about that in the proposal form because we don't want you to have to wonder. And it's a weird time to be planning in-person events right now, but we just want everyone to be safe.
Mm-hmm. Good question. Thanks for asking. Oh, quickly.
If we were accepted at a past event that was canceled, will you relook at it? Please resubmit because our speaker submission systems are not interconnected between events. I can't manually move one proposal from one event to another. But if you have done your proposals in that Word form, just copy and paste from the previous year's submission. It's a nice bonus if you happen to do these in the Word form, as you always have a copy of what you submitted.
Yeah, and if some people don't have that, I mean, it's a good question. Typically we have record of it, so it's just a quick email, and we could probably surface your past submission.
Yeah, and we haven't canceled. I mean, the only thing we really canceled was Learning Solutions last year, and I know that when I've seen the proposals that I said yes to for that event come up at future events, I'll put that in my notes and be like, I liked this for Learning Solutions, I still like it now. All right, we should wrap this up. So final thoughts.
Yeah, my final thoughts to everybody out there is just how accessible Bianca and myself are to help you. I think, I wrote this in a tweet too, and we want to see the community sharing their knowledge, and that's our job. And so we want to put you in a position to be successful, and that starts with the proposal process. So if you have a burning idea and you're just on the fence, fire off an email. We'll pick up the phone. We'll have a conversation about it. Give us some detail up front. It could really drive the go, no-go decision for you and make it a little bit easier to get forward on the program.
And my last thought is, if you're looking for more resources and more encouragement, we're going to be sharing things on the DevLearn social media accounts on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn the next few weeks to support you in writing your proposals. In particular, if you're someone who's not sure if you're ready to do a conference talk or not, there's going to be stuff there for you as well to make it easier and help you make a decision, and I hope the decision will be yes, you are ready, because I bet you are. If you're here, you're probably ready.
You're close. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you all so much.
Yeah.
And can't wait to see your proposals.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Thanks for the great questions.